If you break your arm, right?
Yeah.
An X-ray gives you this like perfectly precise, jagged white line.
Yeah, it's an exact diagnosis.
Exactly. The doctor puts the film up on the light box, taps the fracture with a pen, and just says, there's your problem.
Right.
But when you find yourself stuck in the middle of the conversation and you're stammering,
Usually sweating, too.
100% sweating, desperately trying to construct a sentence in English, there is no X-ray for that.
No, there isn't.
You can't just take a snapshot of it. It happens entirely invisibly, like locked away inside the dark architecture of your brain. And it is arguably the single most frustrating bottleneck any language learner will ever face. I'm talking about the translation trap.
Oh, it's a fascinating and honestly uniquely agonizing cognitive state.
It really is.
Because, you aren't lacking the intelligence to communicate. You aren't even necessarily lacking the vocabulary.
Right. You know the words.
Exactly. What you are experiencing is a severe mechanical failure in your mental processing pathway. It's the friction of forced conversion.
Yes. I've always visualized this specific friction like driving on a long straight road, but someone has inexplicably installed a traffic light every 50 feet.
That is spot on.
Right. You have the vehicle, which is your thought, your core idea, and you know exactly where you want to go. You just can't drive smoothly.
The traffic light analogy perfectly captures the start and stop cognitive load of it all.
Right.
Let's actually break down what happens neurologically during one of those red lights.
Let's do it.
So when you formulate a thought in your native language, the light is green. Your brain lights up its primary linguistic centers totally effortlessly.
Easy, right?
But then you hit the translation phase, red light.
Bam! Stopped.
Your brain has to completely halt the natural flow of thought to access a completely separate semantic database just to retrieve the English equivalent.
So you inch forward. Green light. Wait, what are the syntax rules here? Red light. Do I use in or on? Green light. Then another red light, because suddenly you're hyper-fixating on your pronunciation.
Oh, the pronunciation anxiety is huge.
Right, like, am I rolling that R correctly? Does this vowel sound natural?
And by the time you finally assemble the sentence and push it out of your mouth, the actual organic conversation has moved on.
Totally. The person you're talking to is already 2 topics ahead.
And you're just left exhausted.
Because you are effectively doing double the mental labor for a fraction of the conversational output.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Every single time you cross-reference your native language, you are tasking your working memory to juggle 2 completely different linguistic frameworks simultaneously.
Which is a lot to ask of a human brain.
It is. Human working memory is incredibly limited. When you overload it with translation, you lose the capacity for tone, for emotion, and for active listening.
You're just a robot at that point.
Pretty much. It creates a tremendous psychological burden, which triggers anxiety. That spikes your cortisol levels, which then further degrades your ability to recall vocabulary.
It is just a vicious, self-perpetuating cycle.
It really is.
Which means the mission of this deep dive today isn't just about learning new words, right?
No, not at all.
It's about completely demolishing those traffic lights. We need to tear up the old infrastructure entirely. The objective is to merge you directly into the fast lane, where the neural pathway goes straight from the idea right to English, entirely bypassing the native language middleman.
And achieving that direct connection requires a pretty radical shift in methodology.
Okay, so how do we do it? And just to set the parameters for everyone listening, to respect your time and ensure super high comprehension, we are delivering this session at a deliberately slow and clear pace, and we're wrapping this up in exactly 15 minutes.
Perfect. So to start, we have to move away from the traditional academic concept of studying a language.
Because studying reinforces the translation habit.
Exactly. We have to transition toward living in it, even if that living only happens in microbursts throughout your day.
Right.
But before we can expect the brain to output language effortlessly, we have to meticulously examine what we are putting into it.
The fuel for the engine.
Yes.
Because it's a foundational truth in linguistics. You simply cannot speak if you do not listen.
Output is entirely dependent on input.
So the brain requires a constant, high-quality diet of what the source material calls English food.
Without that input, the language centers of the brain just have no raw material to build those direct neural pathways.
Makes sense.
You can't hack a new trail through the forest if you don't even know what the terrain looks like.
Okay, but let me pause you right there, because I know exactly what the instinct is for a highly motivated, ambitious learner.
Okay, what is it?
If I want to accelerate my progress, right? If I want to reach fluency as fast as humanly possible, my immediate instinct is to seek out the most complex, rigorous food available.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Right. I want to turn on the BBC, listen to high-level geopolitical debates, watch like university lectures on quantum physics in English, and just completely submerge myself in that advanced vocabulary.
It's a very common approach.
Because shouldn't exposing my brain to the absolute hardest material force it to adapt and level up?
Well, it's a very logical assumption,
Mm-hmm.
but it is a trap that derails countless learners.
Really? A trap?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Exposing your brain to material that is vastly above your current comprehension level does not force it to adapt. It forces it to shut down.
Wow. So it's essentially the cognitive equivalent of like walking into a gym on day one and trying to bench press 300 pounds.
That's a great way to put it. You don't get stronger.
You just get crushed.
Precisely. In linguistics, this relates to something called the affective filter.
Okay, break that down for us.
So, when the input is too rapid, the vocabulary is too dense, and the context is too abstract, the brain just cannot latch onto any recognizable linguistic patterns.
So the sound is going in, but nothing is happening.
Right. The auditory processing centers are receiving the sound waves, sure, but the semantic network cannot decode them.
So what does it actually sound like to the learner?
To the listener, it literally begins to sound like the speakers are communicating in Elvish.
Elvish, like Lord of the Rings.
Exactly. It ceases to be language and degrades into mere acoustic noise. And when the brain realizes it cannot extract meaning, it just conserves energy by tuning out entirely.
It just unplugs. Okay, so if the BBC strategy is a fast track to burnout, how do we calibrate this diet? What constitutes the correct English food that actually builds this fast lane?
The optimal input is categorized as easy English.
Easy English.
Yes.
Yes.
You are actively seeking out content where you effortlessly understand roughly 70 to 80% of the vocabulary in the context.
70 to 80%.
That specific threshold is what linguists consider the absolute sweet spot for acquisition.
The sweet spot. Let's dig into the mechanics of that, because honestly, on the surface, choosing material where you already know 80% of the words feels like cheating.
It does feel a bit like slacking off.
Right. It feels like you aren't working hard enough. Why is that 70 to 80% ratio so neurologically vital?
Well, it comes down to the brain's state of arousal and its capacity for pattern recognition.
Okay.
When you understand the vast majority of a sentence, your affective filter is lowered. You are relaxed.
You're not panicked.
Exactly. Your brain is not in a state of panic or cognitive overload. In that relaxed, highly contextualized state, your mind becomes incredibly adept at solving the puzzle of the remaining 20 to 30%.
Oh, I see. Because the surrounding words essentially act as like a scaffolding for the unknown word.
Precisely. You guess the meaning of the unknown word based on the heavy context of the known words.
That is so cool.
And here's the crucial neurological payoff. When you successfully guess a word from context, your brain releases a microdose of dopamine.
So you get a chemical reward.
You do. It rewards you for solving the pattern. That dopamine release deeply encodes the new word into your memory in a way that memorizing a flashcard simply never will.
Because it's an active discovery, not a passive chore.
Exactly. You aren't studying grammar. You are absorbing it like a sponge. The structure of the language is seeping directly into your subconscious.
That makes perfect sense. It's the difference between memorizing the rules of a game from a textbook versus just playing the game with friends until the rules become second nature.
100%.
But to keep that engagement high, the source material mentions another non-negotiable rule for this input phase. Interest equals learning.
Yes, this is huge.
You have to consume content that you actually care about.
Motivation acts as the ultimate amplifier for comprehension. I mean, if you are deeply invested in the subject matter, your desire to understand the content actually overrides the inherent friction of the language barrier.
Right. So, for example, if you are a culinary enthusiast, you shouldn't be watching dry academic lectures on the chemical reactions of baking, right?
No, definitely not.
You should be watching simple, engaging cooking tutorials on YouTube. Because think about the direct mapping that happens there. The chef looks at the camera, kicks up a knife, chops the vegetable, and says, "I cut the onion."
That visual context is the absolute key to bypassing the translation traffic light.
It's immediate. You physically see the round white vegetable. You watch the kinetic action of the knife slicing through it. And simultaneously, your auditory cortex processes the sound, "I cut the onion."
Your brain has an instant, multisensory aha moment.
Yes. It links the visual of the vegetable directly to the phonetic sound onion. You don't have time, and more importantly, you don't have the need to route that information through your native language.
The visual environment just did the translating for you.
It's brilliant.
And this principle applies across literally any domain of interest. Let's say you're passionate about sports, like Formula One racing.
Okay, Formula One.
Watch the race with English commentary. You already possess a deep well of background knowledge.
Right, you know the tracks.
You know the rules of the sport. You recognize the drivers. You understand the sheer tension of a pit stop.
The stakes are already clear to you.
Exactly. That existing knowledge acts as a massive contextual net. The English commentary simply layers new linguistic labels over concepts you already intimately understand.
Or take music, right. It's one of the most accessible forms of this sweet spot input.
Oh, absolutely.
Reading the lyrics to simple pop songs and singing along, and I emphasize simple here. We aren't talking about dense, metaphorical poetry or Bob Dylan.
No.
We are talking about the basic, repetitive hooks of pop music, singing along to a lyric like, "I love you, baby."
Music is a particularly potent tool because it utilizes rhythm and melody as mnemonic devices.
Right, it sticks in your head.
It does. And when you sing, you are engaging different neurological pathways than when you simply speak. You are physically practicing the cadence, the intonation, and the muscular articulation of English in a way that bypasses that analytical, overly critical side of the brain.
It feels playful.
Exactly. Which, again, keeps that affective filter extremely low.
Okay, so we've established the diet. We are consuming this high-context, high-interest English food. The brain is successfully absorbing these patterns. The dopamine is flowing. And we are starting to map English sounds directly to concepts.
We are priming the pump.
But that is still fundamentally passive, isn't it? It's input. At some point, we have to get behind the wheel ourselves.
Really do.
How do we take that absorbed potential and transform it into kinetic energy? How do we actually start outputting, start speaking directly in English, especially when the fear of sounding foolish is just so paralyzing?
The transition from input to output is absolutely where most learners stall out.
It's terrifying.
The performance anxiety is entirely valid.
Yeah.
Speaking a second language feels intensely vulnerable.
You feel like a toddler again.
You do. You are stripping away your usual eloquence and sophistication and reverting to a much simpler, more error-prone version of yourself.
So what's the fix?
The solution to this is to completely remove the variable that causes the anxiety in the first place.
Which is?
The audience.
You become your own best conversation partner.
Exactly.
This is such a liberating concept from the sources. You deliberately construct safe spaces for output practice. Environments where the risk of social judgment is mathematically zero.
Places like the shower, the interior of your car during a commute, or just an empty room in your house.
Right, so your neighbors don't think you're totally crazy.
Right. By utilizing spaces like the shower or the car, you aren't just finding privacy, you're creating a psychological sanctuary. You eliminate the fear of anyone hearing you.
And without an audience, there's no performance.
And without a performance, the intense pressure to be perfectly accurate just dissipates. You are free to experiment.
Okay, so picture it. You're alone in the car, the doors are locked, the audience is gone. You are ready to start talking to yourself. What is the methodology here? Because I assume we aren't just aimlessly babbling.
No, there are two very specific architectural rules for this self-narration.
Let's hear them.
Rule 1 is imperative. Start small. When you first attempt to output without translation, you must absolutely resist the urge to tackle complex, abstract thought.
So don't try to debate economic policy with yourself.
Please don't. Do not try to summarize a philosophical treatise. You have to anchor your output entirely in the immediate, tangible, physical world around you.
It's about stripping away the complexity to isolate the mechanism.
Exactly.
Let's look at the neurological implications of this. If I look at a coffee mug on my desk, right, and I want to identify it, the old way, the traffic light way, is that my visual cortex sees the object, sends the signal to my native language semantic node, retrieves the native word, and then tries to find the English match.
Which is way too many steps.
Right. Starting small allows us to sever that old connection. You look at the mug, and you actively force your brain to connect the visual data directly to the English sound mug.
You are intentionally bypassing the native semantic node. By focusing on simple, physical objects in your immediate environment, you reduce the cognitive load to the absolute minimum.
Leaving all your brain power for the English word.
Exactly, allowing you to focus entirely on forging that new direct neural link.
Which leads us to the second and arguably the most crucial rule of this entire framework. Rule 2. Fluency over perfection.
This rule is incredibly difficult for adults to accept.
Because we hate making mistakes.
We do. Our educational systems condition us to view mistakes as failures. But in language acquisition, hypercorrectness is actually the enemy of momentum.
Let's unpack the reality of this. Imagine you are in your safe space, you are narrating your actions, and you confidently say out loud, "I is walking to the door."
Okay, an obvious grammar mistake.
Right, you've used the completely wrong verb conjugation. Now, the immediate knee-jerk reaction for almost every learner is to physically wince, stop speaking, mentally chastise themselves, and then repeat the sentence with the correct grammar.
And that self-correction is the exact cognitive behavior that installs the traffic lights we are trying to demolish.
Wow.
Yes. When you stop to correct the grammar, you are breaking the flow of thought. You are reinforcing the habit of hyper-monitoring your own speech.
You are choosing precision at the cost of propulsion.
That's beautifully said.
Thanks. So the strategy dictates that when you make a mistake and say, "I is walking," you must accept the flawed output and simply keep going.
You push through the discomfort. The priority in these private self-narration sessions is relentless forward momentum.
It is about proving to your brain that it can generate continuous English sounds without catastrophically failing.
Even if those sounds are grammatically misshapen, you are prioritizing the act of driving over the perfection of the vehicle.
And the grammar will just catch up eventually.
It will. It will naturally self-correct over time through continued exposure to that 70 to 80% comprehensible input we discussed earlier. But the habit of fluid, unhesitating speech must be practiced independently of grammatical perfection.
Okay, I want to make this tangible for everyone listening right now. Let's run a micro experiment.
Let's do it.
We are going to practice that direct, small-scale mapping, bypassing the translation phase entirely. I'm going to give you 3 seconds. I want you to look around the room or the street or the train carriage you are currently in. Don't analyze, just observe. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Now, what did you lock onto?
The goal here was not to compose a symphony of description. It was simply to establish a single, immediate anchor point in English.
Exactly. Did your eyes land on your smartphone?
Oh.
The internal thought, arriving instantly without a native language precursor, should simply be, "This is my phone."
Perfect.
Or maybe you looked at a pet. "The cat is sleeping." Tiny atomic-level sentences. They are aggressively basic, but they serve as the foundational bricks of the fast lane.
You are grounding your reality in English syntax.
Right.
And while labeling a single object is a fantastic starting exercise, it is inherently static. To truly rewire the brain's approach to language, we have to integrate this methodology into the kinetic flow of daily life.
Right, we can't just stare at our phones all day.
We need to move from isolated vocabulary mapping to sustained environmental narration.
This smoothly brings us to the practical core of our deep dive. We are going to take the entire theoretical framework, the high context input, the private safe spaces, the direct mapping, the prioritization of fluency over perfection, and we're going to apply it to a rigid, actionable routine.
This is where the magic happens.
We will walk you through exactly 5 daily scenarios from the source material, providing simple English example sentences for each.
And by tying the linguistic practice to existing daily habits, we leverage behavioral momentum.
You don't have to find time to practice.
Exactly. The practice simply overlays what you are already doing.
Let's start at the very beginning. Scenario 1, waking up. This is building the foundation.
The timing here is the absolute critical variable. This practice must begin the moment you open your eyes.
So no hitting snooze and going back to sleep.
Nope. You want to hit what's called the hypnopompic state, that groggy transitional window of consciousness right when you wake up, before you reach for your smartphone, before you begin mentally reviewing your schedule for the day.
Why is that specific fleeting window of time so important to capture?
Because when you first wake up, your brain's language centers are essentially rebooting. The native language inner monologue hasn't fully spun up to its normal dominant volume yet.
Oh, that makes so much sense. It's quiet in there.
It is. By immediately forcing an English thought, you are preemptively claiming the linguistic baseline for the day. You are establishing the English mindset before the native language thoughts have a chance to take over and assert control.
It's like getting out ahead of the traffic before rush hour even starts.
Exactly.
And the execution of this is wonderfully minimalist. You open your eyes, you stare at the ceiling, and you consciously generate the thought. And here is our first example sentence. I am in bed.
I am in bed. It requires virtually zero cognitive exertion, yet it achieves a massive psychological victory. It flips the linguistic switch.
Now, claiming that first thought in bed is a great static start, but it doesn't hold up once you start interacting with your environment. The moment you leave the bedroom, your brain is bombarded with choices and sensory data.
Which is exactly why the strategy has to shift from passive observation to active engagement.
And that brings us to scenario 2, the kitchen and eating. This phase introduces what the source calls the detective game.
I love the detective game. In this game, your objective is active sensory integration. You are no longer just looking. You are labeling everything you see and experience.
So as you open cabinets and prepare your breakfast, you are tasked with attaching English labels to every piece of visual and tactile data you encounter.
It's about overwhelming the brain's sensory inputs with English associations.
Okay, let's play it out. You pull open the refrigerator door, the blast of cold air hits you, you see the interior light, and you state the fact. The fridge is white.
Yeah.
You pick up a piece of fruit, you feel the smooth skin, you register the color, you say, the apple is red.
You are cementing the noun to the physical experience.
Right. And you take a bite of your food, the bread is tasty, you take a drink, the water is cold.
And notice how vital it is to extend this narration beyond just visual identification, right into the realm of gustatory and tactile feedback. As you actually consume the breakfast, you narrate the physical sensations.
By linking the English adjective directly to the visceral physical sensation of cold water or tasty bread, you are creating a deeply entrenched neural connection.
The memory of the word becomes completely intertwined with the physical experience, making it drastically easier to recall later.
Okay, so as the morning progresses, the complexity of the tasks increases, and our narration must evolve to match it. This leads to scenario 3. Making coffee. Or, any equivalent multi-step morning chore if you're a tea drinker.
Right. Here we introduce a highly entertaining and slightly weird technique.
The third-person movie narration.
Yes. Technically known as illism, referring to oneself in the third person.
This technique is phenomenal. So instead of continuing with the first-person perspective, like, I am doing this, I am doing that, you completely detach. You narrate your own actions as if you are a character in a movie.
The mechanism at play here is psychological distancing.
How is that up?
Well, when speaking in the first person, your ego is highly involved, which means the affective filter, the anxiety of making a mistake, is easily triggered.
Because it's you failing.
Exactly. By shifting to the third person, you create a buffer between your ego and the language. It feels less like a personal test and more like a playful observation.
Which drastically lowers the stakes.
Precisely. It introduces emotions and sequence without the pressure.
Okay, let's use this specific example from the text. Let's say the character is Leo. You are Leo. You are standing at the counter. Instead of thinking, I need sugar, you verbalize the scene like a director.
Okay, let's hear it.
Leo is now making coffee. He is looking for the sugar. Oh, there is no sugar. Leo is sad.
I know it sounds slightly absurd.
It feels a little crazy to do in your kitchen.
It does, but analytically, it is a dense, highly effective linguistic workout. First, you are relentlessly practicing the present continuous tense.
Is making, is looking.
Right, which is notoriously tricky for many learners to internalize. Second, you are forced to utilize prepositions of movement and location. And third, you are integrating emotional vocabulary like sad and attaching it to a specific contextualized narrative.
You are creating a micro-drama in your kitchen, and because you are removed from it as the narrator, the words just flow faster.
They do.
But eventually, the movie has to end, and you have to leave for work, which demands another shift in our linguistic focus. Scenario 4, leaving the house. This is where we transition out of the static environment and into motion.
This scenario is all about finding the verbs.
Finding the verbs.
Up until this point, the primary focus has been on nouns, adjectives, and state of being descriptions, right? But as you physically prepare to exit your home, your body is engaged in a sequence of rapid, complex actions.
You're grabbing keys, putting on coats.
The linguistic requirement shifts entirely to the motor cortex. You must actively search your mental database to find verbs on demand in real time to describe what your body is doing.
It is a phenomenal kinesthetic mapping exercise. You are tying the physical action of your limbs directly to the English verb.
Okay, give us the examples.
You reach down. I'm putting on my shoes. You grab the brass handle. I am opening the door. You step outside and feel the air. I am walking to the bus stop. And then, scanning the street, I see the bus.
Pay attention to the temporal constraint here. Because you are moving, You cannot pause for 30 seconds to translate the word for shoe or open.
Right, you'll miss the bus.
Exactly. The environment forces you to prioritize that fluency over perfection we discussed earlier. If you can't remember the word for locking, you might just say, I am closing the door strong.
Closing the door strong. I love that.
It's an imperfect workaround, sure, but it maintains the momentum. You are training the brain to be linguistically agile under pressure.
You are keeping pace with the rhythm of your own existence in a second language, which is a massive achievement.
It really is.
Now, let's jump to the end of the day. You've returned home, you've eaten dinner, and it's time for scenario 5, washing the dishes.
Routine household chores present a uniquely perfect landscape for self-narration.
They really do.
Because chores are inherently process-oriented. They involve taking a chaotic or soiled environment and restoring it to order. Linguistically, this provides the ideal framework to practice describing changes in state.
Changes in state, that requires a different type of logical sequencing than just listing actions, doesn't it?
It does. When you narrate a change in state, you are establishing a temporal relationship between two opposing adjectives. You are observing a before condition, performing an action, and then articulating the after condition.
It forms a closed loop of logic.
Exactly.
And the dishes provide the ultimate visual representation of this. You pick up a greasy plate, you state the baseline reality, the plate is dirty.
Simple and true.
You apply the soap, you scrub it, you rinse it, and then you articulate the resolution of the process. Now the plate is clean.
Dirty to clean.
Wet to dry, empty to full. You are practicing the vocabulary of transformation.
If we step back and review the architecture of this entire daily routine, you can see how comprehensive it is. You initiate the English track in the hypnopompic state of waking up. You engage multisensory noun mapping during the kitchen detective game.
You practice psychological distancing with the third-person coffee movie.
You link the motor cortex to active verbs while leaving the house. And finally, you master the logic of state changes while washing the dishes.
You have fundamentally bookended your entire waking existence with an English framework. You've woven the language into the very fabric of your life. Rather than treating it as a textbook, you open for an hour and then close. We've covered a massive amount of ground in our 15 minutes today. To recap, we started by diagnosing the pain of the translation bottleneck, those agonizing red traffic lights. We discovered that the only way to build the fast lane is to first feed the brain with high-interest, enjoyable English food.
Staying strictly in that 70–80% easy sweet spot where you don't study grammar, you absorb it.
Right. And crucially, we established that when you transition to output, you use those 5 daily scenarios of self-narration, prioritizing raw fluency over grammatical perfection.
But as we wrap up, there is one overarching warning from the source text. A vital rule that governs everything we've discussed today.
What's the warning?
You must be patient.
Patient.
Yes. You have to understand how neuroplasticity actually operates. The brain is a muscle.
Right.
You cannot go to the gym once and expect to become a bodybuilder.
Sadly, no.
Building a direct pathway to English is very much like hacking a new trail through a dense, overgrown forest. Your native language is a massive, heavily paved, multi-lane highway. It's effortless to travel. When you first try to think directly in English, you are stepping off that highway and trying to push through thick brush.
It's slow, it's exhausting, and you get tangled up.
And if you only try to walk that new trail once a month for 3 hours, the forest simply grows back, the brush covers your footprints, and the next time you try, it is just as agonizing as the first.
So binge studying is out.
Consistency is the true secret. The brain optimizes for what is used consistently. Walking that new forest trail for just 5 to 10 minutes every single day, trampling down the brush a little bit each morning while you make coffee or wash the dishes, is infinitely better than 2 hours once a week.
Consistency compacts the soil. Eventually, that rugged trail becomes a clear path, and suddenly, it's the path of least resistance. Just 5 to 10 minutes every day.
That is the true cost of admission to the fast lane.
Well, I want to leave you with one final, slightly radical, provocative thought to ponder today. Something that builds on the source's ideas, but flips our traditional academic conditioning entirely on its head.
Oh, where are we going with this?
Well, if your brain is a muscle, and we know definitively that the tension of perfectionism restricts how freely a muscle can move, what if making deliberate, silly grammar mistakes on purpose during your private 5-minute narrations is actually the fastest way to unlock your fluency?
Whoa, That is a highly provocative concept.
Ah.
You are essentially suggesting that learners intentionally inoculate themselves against the fear of failure by manifesting the failure on their own terms.
Exactly. Think about it. If the fear of saying I is walking creates the red light that stops your sentence, what happens if you stand in the shower and loudly, proudly declare, I is walking, the apple are blue, he do be happy?
You intentionally break the rules in a completely safe space.
Yes. You demonstrate to your own nervous system that the sky doesn't fall, the world doesn't end, and the words just keep flowing. You completely dismantle the friction by leaning into the absurdity of it.
By intentionally misfiring the syntax, you strip the mistake of its psychological power. It's a fascinating hack to artificially lower the effective filter.
It cures the paralysis. So as you move forward into the rest of your day, I have a challenge for you. Look at one thing in the room you are in right now. Give yourself the green light and name it directly in English. And if you mess it up, keep smiling, embrace the chaos, and keep moving.
You just keep moving.
The brush is clearing, the fast lane is opening up before you, and you just have to hit the gas. Thanks for joining this deep dive.